I'm done here, I said, turning to leave. Fine. And don't bother coming back, Rachel fired back, her words sharp and final. Normally, I would have thrown in a classic parting jab, but this time I just walked away. But today, I wanted to leave on a somewhat classier note. Over 13 years of marriage, we'd hurled our fair share of insults, but this time felt different, like I was actually done. In a few days, I figured she'd understand I meant it for real. For the past 8 months or so, Rachel had become a full-time verbal wrecking crew. I couldn't make sense of it. Her digs weren't just sharp, they were downright painful. So, I started avoiding her, hoping it'd keep the peace. I'd sit in my truck longer before coming inside. Some nights, I wouldn't walk through the front door until after Rachel and our daughter Emily, she's 12, had already finished dinner. I had to start looking out for myself. If there were leftovers, I'd eat. Lately, though, those seemed to disappear before I got home. Name's Scott Mercer, by the way. Technically, it's Liam Scott Mercer, but since my old man's also a Liam, they just called me Scott from the get-go to dodge the confusion. So no, I'm not a junior. My dad's full name is Liam Patrick Mercer. Why he skipped the whole junior thing, I'll never know. I would have been fine going by Junior, or even LJ, but it was always just Scott. Or Benny, if you're family. Yeah, I've got Czech roots. Well, I'm American, but the Mercer name sticks out. I've heard every dumb Czech joke in the book. Actually, I'm sure there are a few I haven't heard yet. People keep coming up with new ones like it's a yearly tradition. Thing is, apart from my dad, I'm the only Czech guy most folks in our town of 10,000 know. So yeah, I'm their go-to punchline. Technically, I'm only half Czech. On my mom's side, it's a mix, German, Italian, Spanish, and English. But since the last name's Mercer, everyone just labels me the Czech. Now, about Rachel. Turns out, she's not the woman I thought I married. And I only found that out about 5 weeks ago. Like I said earlier, I'd been keeping my distance cause of how harsh things had gotten between us. One Monday night, after dodging another dinner at home, I swung by a local diner, sat in a booth, and was looking over the menu when I caught a snippet of conversation coming from the next booth over. Something about a Czech. My ears perked up. How long you been with the Johnless missus? One guy asked. Since they got hitched, the other replied. Hell, I even was with her on their wedding day. And he's got no clue. I didn't recognize the first voice, but the second one? That one hit me like a freight train. It was Tyler Brooks, my best friend. I froze. They kept talking, but after that bombshell, I couldn't register a single word, until Tyler added, we still hook up twice a month, at least. Then he said something like, Scott's so clueless in that car lot. He doesn't have the slightest idea. That's when the waitress came by to take my order. I just looked at her and muttered, sorry, I gotta go. I got up fast, making sure I stayed out of their line of sight. I was in a daze, trying to process what I'd just heard. My wife, and my closest friend. The guy who stood right next to me when we got married. And he's also my go-to guy for car repairs. Still is. Not officially on my payroll, but he's the only mechanic I use for all my inspections and repairs. See, I run a used car dealership. Yep, I'm that guy, a used car salesman. And believe me, I've heard all the wisecracks about it too. But truth be told, business is solid. People trust me to sell them reliable rides for fair prices. And when something goes wrong, I make it right. Tyler has always been sharp under the hood, and I made sure he stayed busy and well paid. I once offered to hire him on full time, but he laughed it off, saying he wouldn't respect himself if he worked for a check. He claimed he was joking, but I always wondered if there was a little truth hiding in that punchline. Still, I kept him on as a contractor. Independent in name only. Fact is, I was his only source of income. That's going to be his downfall. After I left the diner, I just drove. Cruised the streets trying to figure out if what I heard was real or just Tyler talking out of his ass. If he wasn't making it up, their meetups were pretty rare, which meant even hiring a private investigator could end up being a waste of money. Still, I needed answers. So later that night, I snooped. Rachel was acting like her usual self, which suited me just fine. I waited till she was asleep, then went through her email, nothing shady. Her phone was locked, but I cracked it pretty easily using our daughter's birthday. There were a few messages that raised my eyebrows, but none from Tyler. And yeah, his name was in her contacts, but that wasn't suspicious. He was my buddy, after all. Still, something felt off. Even if it wasn't Tyler, I was sure there was someone. I didn't sleep much. Think I finally passed out a little after 3:41 in the morning. Next day at the lot, Tyler swung by and cracked his usual check joke. Normally, I let it roll off me. But this time, I bit back. Tyler, what do you actually know about Czech Republic? I asked. Could you even point it out on a map if your life depended on it? You like making fun of Czechs for being slow, but I bet they could find the US on a map. Might even get our state right. Now get back to work. He stood there, stunned, didn't say a word. He could tell something had changed. Tyler isn't the academic type. He's more hands-on, the streetwise kind. Always was better with engines than textbooks. Back in high school, I'd help him out with schoolwork just so he'd graduate. Now, I found myself rethinking that whole friendship. His betrayal had me questioning not just my marriage, but everything, especially how I chose who to trust. I shut myself in my office, trying to figure out the best way to get real proof. Calling them out without it would just give them room to lie and deny. So, I reached out to a PI over in my city. Laid out everything. He said it'd be expensive to track them, considering their meetups were irregular. Suggested I start by tagging her phone. Said I could at least keep tabs on her location that way. Cameras could work, but the decent ones are pricey, and cheap ones get spotted easily. Even the high-end stuff might not fool her if she's paying attention. His advice? Install a tracking app and wait for the right moment to catch them in the act. Well, I'm still sending you a check, I told him. If you ever find yourself in Greed City, drop by Mercer's lot, I added. Don't make it out that way much, he said. But if I do, I'll look you up. One thing that's always helped me in sales. Making people feel seen. Early on, I figured out that everyone just wants to feel like they matter. I took his advice and went with the tracker. Saved myself the headache and cost of setting up cameras Rachel might notice. That night, once the house was quiet, I carefully installed the tracking app on her phone and synced it with mine. It'd run silently in the background. She'd never know. That night, I finally slept. The next morning at the dealership, I kept checking the tracker. Rachel worked part-time over at the city bookstore, maybe 10 to 15 hours a week. She liked to call it her mad money, and she didn't think twice about blowing some of it at the salon. Afterward, she swung by the grocery store, and not long after, she was back home. Tyler had mostly been around the house that day, but he and Rachel seemed to be on opposite schedules lately. Whenever she was home, he'd be off at work. So, for that day at least, I figured nothing suspicious had happened. That evening, I made an effort to be a little more pleasant with both my wife and our daughter. I floated the idea of going out for dinner. Rachel didn't exactly light up, but she didn't shut it down either. As for our daughter, teenagers, she hesitated like usual, but I nudged her until she gave in. Dinner went off without a hitch. At one point, I casually brought Tyler's name into the conversation, and that's when Rachel stiffened up. She quickly changed the topic, which only made my gut twist tighter. My mind started racing again. Was Tyler telling the truth? I needed to figure this out for myself. That night, I didn't check her phone. I tried to play it cool. Whenever I had tried sneaking a look at her calls or texts before, I came up empty. Either she deleted everything right away, or she didn't leave a trail to begin with. Climbing into bed later, I looked over at her and said, "Thanks for coming to dinner." "Thank you, Scott," she replied, locking eyes with me. "That was a nice surprise. You might just get lucky tonight. It's been a while." And she was right. Things between us had been rocky for some time. After her usual bedtime routine in the bathroom, Rachel slipped into bed beside me. I laid there, feeling torn. If she really had cheated, did I even want to be close to her? I decided I'd let her make the first move until I had real answers. I didn't initiate anything. We did end up getting close, but honestly, it felt kind of routine. No need to go into detail. Still, I didn't mind it. Over the following week, I kept checking the GPS location on her phone, and everything looked normal. On Saturday night, while she was asleep, I went through her phone again. Nothing. No messages. No missed calls. Just dead ends. Part of me started thinking maybe Tyler was full of it, just puffing himself up, like he had back in high school. It wouldn't be the first time he'd spun some wild story to look like a big shot. But my brain wouldn't rest. I tossed and turned, restless. By 3 a.m., I was wide awake, staring at the ceiling like it held answers. I finally got out of bed and headed downstairs to grab a drink, hoping to calm my nerves. I poured myself a Jack and Coke, phone in hand, and figured, what the hell, I'd check it one more time. I punched in the password, our daughter's birthday, and it hit me like a punch in the chest. Her birthday, that was the key. Rachel's pregnancy had been rough from the start. There were a few scary moments where we thought we might lose the baby. Her Rh factor didn't match the baby's, which caused some complications. Her body was actually fighting the pregnancy. She spent the last 2 weeks before delivery on strict bed rest. We were doing everything we could to make sure our baby made it into this world healthy. Emily was born exactly 9 months after our wedding day. We were over the moon when she arrived safe and sound, but man, she was a tough kid. She cried constantly, barely slept, and nursing was a nightmare. Those early days were brutal. Sometime during her first year, Rachel put her foot down and said we weren't having any more kids. That hit me hard. I'd always pictured a bigger family, but the truth is, the stress from raising a newborn really took a toll on both of us. Like I said, Emily came along 9 months to the day after we tied the knot. People call that a wedding night baby, conceived on the big night or maybe during the honeymoon. That's when the light bulb went off in my head. If Tyler's story had any truth to it, Rachel might have already been pregnant before our wedding. Now, Rachel had been on the pill back then. And no, we didn't save ourselves for marriage. That part of our relationship had always been active. The doctor later said the stress from the wedding could have thrown off her hormones and messed with the pill's effectiveness. So if the pill failed that night, it probably failed before that, too. And now I had to know. There was a 50-50 shot that Emily wasn't biologically mine. You know that saying, the early bird gets the worm? Well, in Tyler's case, it might have been more like, the early worm got the birdie. I got up off the couch and headed to the bathroom. Found some cotton swabs in the drawer. Emily was out cold in her room. She'd finally gotten into a decent sleep routine by age 5, but before that, total chaos. She was lying there, mouth open, softly snoring. I gently swabbed the inside of her cheek with a Q-tip. She didn't even flinch. I put the swab in a plastic bag and did the same for myself. Even if the test confirmed she was mine, there'd still be questions about Rachel's honesty. But I told myself I'd deal with that later. Saturday came around, and we all had our usual chores to get through. I kept my distance, didn't say much, just trying to keep it together. I was nervous and filled with doubt all day. "Scott, you okay?" Rachel asked. I needed a quick excuse, so I said, "Yeah, just thinking of buying a few cars at the next auction to fill the lot." "Just don't overdo it," she said, like she always did. She liked to talk about the dealership as if it was our business. Truth is, I set it up under a separate legal entity to make sure our personal finances stayed protected. Living in a tight-knit, religious community, I didn't want my business life bleeding into our personal reputation. I told her I was thinking of paying off the credit cards and only keeping one open to help our credit score. That was just a cover, something I could point to later if she ever stumbled onto what I was really doing. "Do what you think is best," she said, barely looking up. Her voice didn't carry much emotion. That's when the idea really took shape. Funny how your mind can come alive when it's trying to protect you. I realized this was the safest way to handle things, less mess if the truth turned out to be ugly. So, first thing Monday morning, I drove down to university and walked into the science department. They pointed me to the head of the department, who was more than willing to help out. I handed over my samples and gave him a stack of my business cards. Told him I'd offer a 20% discount on any work he needed done on a vehicle. He seemed grateful. Meanwhile, I'd already started eyeing a new ride to replace my aging Camry. "I might stop by and check out what you've got," I told him. "If I don't find anything that grabs me, maybe we can work together to track something down." "Sounds good. I'll keep that in mind," he said with a polite nod. As I walked out of the university, I could feel a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth, but it wasn't a happy one. It was more like a nervous smirk, because deep down, I knew the DNA results could very well blow my marriage to pieces. Telling Rachel I was focused on buying cars was just a convenient excuse to hide what was really eating at me. Thing is, the idea of buying cars actually started to grow on me. I called John into my office. He's my accountant, loan guy, and sometimes even steps in to sell a car or two. I laid out my plan for expanding the lot. "We're gonna make this work," I said with some conviction. "There's something else, too, John," I added after a beat. "I want to pay off the mortgage. Think we can arrange a lump sum payment?" He gave me a thoughtful look and said, "Let me run the numbers. I'll swing back after lunch." Once he left, I sat there alone, debating whether I should call my lawyer and ask for someone who specializes in family law. But I stopped myself. Don't jump the gun, I thought. Wait for the test results first. So far, there wasn't any undeniable proof of cheating, just a storm of doubts. After lunch, John came back with a spreadsheet. We went over the numbers and mapped out next steps for both the business and my personal plan. The next 2 days crawled by. I felt like I was walking through wet cement, waiting for that call. Finally, Wednesday evening, the department head rang me up. He had the results and said he'd stop by to talk about the car. When he got to my office, I could read the truth in his eyes before he even opened his mouth. The samples aren't a match, he said flatly. I nodded, already bracing myself for the blow. I had suspected as much, but hearing it out loud hit harder than I expected. He gave me a moment, then handed over the envelope with the full report. I glanced at it, then looked back up, putting on my game face. So, about that car you were looking at, I said, shifting gears. Yeah, he chuckled. Might sound like a midlife cliche, but I just hit 40, and I'm thinking it's time for a reliable car. Something like a Toyota Camry. I didn't have one on the lot at the time, but I told him I'd hunt for a good one at the auction the next day. I'll give you a call later today with any leads, I promised as he left. In the back of my mind, I noted that Clara, my assistant, knew I might leave early. I'd be reachable if needed, but deep down I knew she wouldn't reach out. She handled most things without needing help. Driving around town that day felt different. The roads, the people, the sky, it all felt like a new world, like I was seeing things through a cracked lens. I finally picked up the phone and called my lawyer. He sounded genuinely sorry when I told him what had happened. He gave me the number of a family law attorney he trusted. I called and booked an evening appointment. Sitting in a quiet booth at a local diner later, I nursed a snack and stared out the window. Had I really thrown it all away? I didn't even have a child to show for it, not in the biological sense, anyway. Emily. I still loved her, still felt like her father in many ways. But now I knew the truth, and I couldn't pretend anymore. There was no going back. One thing was crystal clear. Tyler wasn't getting away with this. We'd been tight since school, but what he did, that crossed every damn line. With friends like that, who needs enemies? And Rachel, she'd have to answer for her part in this too. I couldn't tell for sure if she knew Emily wasn't mine, but either way, she kept it from me. She carried on with my best man on our wedding day, no less, and kept seeing him behind my back. And now, I couldn't deny what I'd overheard anymore. Twice a month, she saw him. My blood started to boil just thinking about it. Before I lost control, I knew I needed to be alone. I couldn't go home, not with this fire raging inside me. I should have told Rachel I wouldn't be back that night, but I didn't want to give her any heads up she could use to cover her tracks. I called her anyway. Hello? She answered. Hey, I'll be staying in Denver tonight. Auction starts at 8 tomorrow morning, so I want to be rested. Oh, she said, kind of flat. Well, okay then. Safe travels. I rarely drove out to Denver for auctions, so this was definitely off script. I wondered if she'd take advantage of the opportunity. If she did, she'd have to explain Emily's whereabouts to my parents, and that wouldn't be easy. Still, I planned to check the phone tracker here and there, just to see if she stayed put. I hit the road, planning to snag around 20 cars at auction, including that Camry. I'd set up a pickup and delivery plan to get them back to my lot later. Now came the question of who to trust with inspections. One thing was certain, Tyler wasn't touching any of those cars. Once he wrapped up his current work, that was it. I wasn't giving him another dime. He'd probably try to jack up his rates after hearing about my haul, but I wasn't falling for that. I'd keep the new inventory quiet until I found a reliable mechanic through the auction dealer, someone local, skilled, and not a backstabbing snake. I rolled into Denver around 10 in the morning and checked into a hotel. It wasn't fancy, but it did the job. I couldn't bring myself to use business money on a luxury hotel when I didn't need one. I'm not a complicated guy. Give me a clean bed, a working shower, and I'm good. First thing I did when I got into the room was check Rachel's phone location. Still at home, or at least, her phone was. But sleep didn't come easy that night. I lay there, tossing, mind spinning. How could she do that? With him, of all people? On the day we said our vows. And to keep it going for this long? What was I even to her? I started questioning everything about our marriage. We'd had ups and downs, sure, but I'd always believed we were in it together. Exclusively. Honestly, I was wrong. Looking back, even the early years were rocky. We hadn't planned to have a baby right away. The original idea was to wait 3 or 4 years, get settled, then start a family. We'd even agreed on having 4 kids before we got married. Then Emily came along and flipped the whole script. And now, knowing Tyler was likely the reason why, all of it felt like a joke. All the effort, all the love, we built our life on a lie. 14 years wasted. Even the good times couldn't balance out this betrayal. If Rachel hadn't messed around with Tyler, maybe things would have been different. Maybe she would have gotten pregnant by me. Maybe the pregnancy would have gone smoother, and we wouldn't have had such a tough start as parents. Maybe she wouldn't have sworn off having more kids. Tyler destroyed everything when he seduced my future wife on the biggest day of my life. Now, he gets her twice a month, laughing at me behind my back. The loyal friend. The clueless husband. He won't be laughing for long. Lying there, I tried to settle my breathing and calm my nerves. If I didn't, I knew I'd be staring at that ceiling all night. I flipped on the TV and settled into a mindless comedy show. The laughs helped calm my nerves a bit, and by the time 12 rolled around, I was finally ready to drift off, trying to focus on the busy day ahead. The auction itself went better than expected. I managed to score some solid vehicles at great prices and even got to network with a handful of local dealers. Didn't spot any Camrys in the auction lineup, so I started asking around. Turned out 2 dealers had one each, one red, one black. I worked out tentative deals with both, just waiting on my client to let me know which color he preferred. Both dealers were open to it and said they'd move forward as soon as I gave them the rundown on the cars I had on my lot. Honestly, I should have been coming to these auctions more often. Talking shop with other folks in the same game lit a fire under me again. It was a refreshing break from the storm cloud hovering over my personal life. Later that afternoon, I had my meeting with the lawyer. I was hoping for a way out, but the news was rough. If I filed for divorce, there was a good chance I'd lose half of everything, my assets, monthly alimony, and even child support, for a kid that wasn't biologically mine. Right then and there, I made a decision. I wouldn't divorce her, not yet. Instead, I'd leave her with Tyler's kid. I'd pay off the mortgage, but since the loan was in my name alone, she wouldn't be able to sell the house. I'd keep paying the taxes and the utilities, all while living elsewhere. That way, she couldn't walk away with it or make any moves without me knowing. But the business? That was a different beast. Even though I'd structured it as a corporation, I had a gut feeling I needed more protection. If I wasn't careful, I could lose everything I'd worked for. First thing on the list was a call to my business attorney. By the time I got home that night, I was running on fumes. "I'm wiped," I told Rachel as I walked past her. "Gonna shower and crash early." "Want something to eat?" she asked from the kitchen. "Nah. Had a late lunch," I answered. Part of me appreciated that she at least asked. The shower felt like heaven. The hot water, the steam, it was like washing off layers of stress. I still had problems, sure, but having a plan gave me something to hold on to. Not long after I laid down, sleep finally took over. It had been a hell of a week, but for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. I woke up early, feeling halfway human again, and snuck out to the office before Rachel or Emily stirred. At my desk, buried in spreadsheets and financial documents, I started setting things in motion. I updated John on the 21 cars I'd picked up and pulled Clara aside. "No more sending work Tyler's way," I told her, keeping my voice low. "Keep it quiet." She gave me a curious look. "You got it, boss." "Thanks, Clara. I don't say it enough, but you're one of the best." At 10 on the dot, I rang up my lawyer. "Is my business safe?" I asked. "It's registered separately, which helps," he said. "But if she presses the issue, the court might force a sale to split the value." "Sell my business?" I said, stunned. "That place is my life." "I get it. Let me think on it. I'll call you by Monday with a game plan." That news hit hard. I'd put everything into that dealership. Built it from scratch. It was like a child to me. Unlike Emily, I thought bitterly. The anger crept in again, but I knew better than to let it take over. I'd learned to compartmentalize, focus on what I could control. So I pushed the rage aside and picked up the phone. I called Shane. "Shane, it's Scott Mercer. I've got a line on 2 Camrys, red and black. Still interested?" "Depends on the price," he replied coolly. "Well, which color do you prefer? I'll show you both, and we'll go from there. If you don't want either, I'll have no problem selling them." "Which would you choose?" he asked. "Red stands out, but fades quicker. Black's got class, but it gets hot in this sun. You planning to keep it in a garage?" "Yeah. Then I'd go with red. Want to come check it out Saturday or Sunday?" "Sounds good. I'll call when I'm heading your way." "Perfect." Once I hung up, I called the dealer with the red Camry and proposed a trade. He had his eye on a BMW that had been sitting on my lot for months, and honestly, it'd probably sell quicker in the city. Meanwhile, Tyler rolled in with a few vehicles still waiting for repairs. As an independent contractor, he came and went as needed, which normally worked for me. But watching him now, knowing what I knew, made my blood boil. He overheard some of the guys talking about the 21 new arrivals. "Scott, when are those auction cars showing up?" Want to plan my schedule? He asked casually. The auction house will deliver them. Sometime late next week, maybe the week after, I said, forcing a smile. He nodded and walked off. I actually laughed to myself once he was out of earshot. The idea of him thinking we were still on good terms was almost comical. That weekend, I kept my distance from Rachel. I buried myself in yard work and errands. I didn't bother checking her phone location anymore. I didn't care where she went. Whatever love or trust we had, it was gone. Raising another man's child? That betrayal cut too deep. Sunday rolled around, and I headed back to the dealership. Finalized the deal to swap the BMW for the Camry and hit the road for Denver again. We'll grab lunch when you get here, the dealer offered. Sounds good, I said, and let Clara know I'd be out the whole day. Got it, boss, she replied. Dependable as always. Honestly, she deserved a raise. The drive was relaxing, and lunch turned out to be better than expected. We talked shop, shared some laughs. Felt like the start of a solid business relationship. It hit me then. I didn't need a family-sized car anymore. Just me and a two-seater was enough. I pulled into the driveway behind the wheel of a shiny red Camry. Rachel peeked out the window, said something to Emily, and both of them stepped outside to get a look. Why'd you get this, honey? Rachel asked, that familiar condescending tone slipping in. Just picked it up for a client in Denver, I replied. Figured you might want to take a spin. No thanks, she said dismissively. Not really into cars. I turned to Emily. Hey, kiddo, want to go for a ride? She wrinkled her nose. No, Dad. I already get teased enough with our last name. I'm not about to show up riding in a red car with a Czech used car salesman. Her words landed hard. Teenagers don't hold back, but still, that one stung. I stood there for a second, trying not to let it show. Where did that disrespect come from? I looked over at Rachel, expecting her to maybe say something, correct our daughter, show even a little reaction. But nothing. She just stood there like Emily's words didn't mean a thing. That's when it really sank in. Both the women in my house had started showing me complete disregard. I get it. Teenagers aren't always sweet and cuddly, but the way Emily talked to me? That wasn't just sass. That was something deeper. It made me question whether this family had ever truly been mine. I'm going for a drive, I said, not waiting for a response. I backed the Camry out of the driveway and just drove. Aimlessly, really, letting frustration steer me through the streets of Greed City. I didn't roll back in until around 10:30. I went straight upstairs, took a fast shower, and collapsed into bed. I didn't say a word. Rachel must have come in right after because she flipped on the overhead light, blasting it straight into my eyes. Are you seriously sulking because we didn't get excited over your car? She said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. What? You're not going to spend time with your family now. You're not just Czech, you're childish. I didn't even flinch. But her sudden shift in attitude? That got under my skin. It felt familiar, like Tyler's words coming out of her mouth. Spending time with him had clearly left its mark. Now, even my heritage had become a punchline, and worse, she'd passed that attitude down to our daughter. Only, Emily wasn't even mine. I'd supported her like she was, loved her like she was, but the truth sat heavy on my chest. She wasn't my daughter. Looks like you and your daughter would rather do without a check around here, I said, my voice low and tight. So maybe I should just go? Rachel didn't respond. She didn't have to. Her silence said it all. From that night forward, things in the Mercer house turned ice cold. No shouting, no drama, just the kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl. The next day, I got in touch with Shane. He came by to check out the Camry, and the guy lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. We ran the numbers, and he couldn't believe the deal I gave him. For grand under red book, he said, grinning as he signed the paperwork. I've got a buddy who handles vehicle purchasing for the university. We rotate about 13 cars every couple years. Maybe you could give him a call. Absolutely, I said. I take care of my people, and their people too. I'll make sure he gets a deal worth talking about. I'll have Mark call you by the end of the week. Appreciate it, I told him, meaning every word. That's how I built my business. One handshake, one honest deal, one referral at a time. Then Tuesday rolled around, and my lawyer finally called. Hey Scott, he said, I think I've got a way to protect your business. Can you come by this afternoon? You bet, I told him. I was ready. Anything to escape the suffocating tension at home. We met later that day, and I have to say, the plan he laid out gave me real hope. It would take about 3 weeks to set it all up, but if it worked, it'd be worth every second. During that time, I started moving my personal stuff into a small apartment on the other side of town. I did it quietly, tools, clothes, personal files, mostly when Rachel and Emily weren't around. Rachel did laundry during the week, so she didn't notice my closet getting emptier. And then Sunday night came. I told her straight up, I'm leaving. Right on cue, she launched into the usual jabs, making fun of me for being Czech, for selling used cars, for whatever else she could throw. In the past, I might have just stormed out and holed up in a cheap motel for a night or two, depending how mad I was. The next morning, Monday, I was the first one at the dealership. I gathered everyone in the conference room for what looked like a normal weekly meeting. Morning, everyone, I began. As you know, the cars I picked up a couple weeks ago arrived yesterday. They've all been checked, cleaned up, and they're ready to go. We won't be using Tyler anymore. If he asks, just tell him we're changing things up. I could see their eyebrows raise. They knew something was up. I want you all to know how much I've appreciated your work. You're more than employees. You're like family to me. Which makes this next part hard. I've sold the business. They stared at me, stunned. But don't worry, I continued. Nothing's changing with your positions. The only shift is that Clara will be stepping into a bigger role. She'll be taking on some of my responsibilities and getting a well-deserved raise. The shock turned into applause for Clara. She'd earned every bit of it. Clara, I said as things settled down, I need to talk to you after this. I reassured the rest of them that I'd still be around occasionally, just in an advisory role now. Maybe sell a car here and there, but I wouldn't be stepping on anyone's toes. As we were walking out, guess who was waiting? Tyler. Hey, he said, looking confused. Why wasn't I in the meeting? Because it was for staff only, I said flatly. You're not an employee. He blinked, caught off guard. I saw the new cars came in. I'll get started on the inspections. No need, I told him. They're already done. What? But I always check them, he argued. Tyler, I said, holding back everything I really wanted to yell. I sold the business. The new owner's going in a different direction. He stood there, stunned. I can't believe you sold it, he muttered, like this whole thing was about him. You can pick up your check for the last 2 weeks. It's not much. Clara didn't have much work for you. He looked like he'd swallowed a rock. But I didn't care. I dreamed of telling him off properly. But this would do for now. After the meeting, I pulled Clara aside. Clara, I need this to stay between us, I said quietly. You got it, Scott, she said without hesitation. I'll never repeat anything you don't want shared. Here's the deal, I said. I've set up 2 companies, both registered in Colorado. One owns the dealership lot, the other owns the business itself. I hold all the shares in both. She nodded, following every word. I'm going to file for divorce. Rachel doesn't know yet, but I've already moved out. I'm not going back. Clara's eyes widened. Scott, why? Because she had an affair with Tyler. And Emily. Emily's not my daughter. She didn't say a word, just sat there with me in the silence. I don't even know if Rachel knows the truth or Tyler. But they'll find out. Soon. I didn't plan on filing for divorce, at least not yet. But I made damn sure to keep paying the taxes and utilities on the house. That way, if she filed, she couldn't turn around and claim I abandoned her and take everything. Nope. I wasn't about to let her lay claim to my business. That's why I agreed to sell the company twice, once to the shell company, then again to the holding firm. Let the lawyers figure it out later. By the time any divorce paperwork made it through court, the money would be long spent or moved around. And besides, my income would barely raise a red flag, just a little bit from consulting and the occasional commission. Clara was more than capable of running the place. I told her she had full control over daily operations. You've got the judgment. I'll be around if you've got questions, but I trust you, I said. She smiled when I told her about the ownership transfer. But once I dropped the truth about Rachel and Tyler, her face went from curious to stone cold. Clara was someone I genuinely respected, smart, loyal, and tough. She'd earned my trust 100 times over. There's one last thing I need from you, I added. Order a new sign. And new letterhead, too. What are we calling it? She asked. Helpless Car. I'll explain the name someday. For now, just trust me, it tells the whole story. She didn't quite get it, but she nodded. That's how much she trusted me. After saying my goodbyes to the team, I got in the Mercedes and headed out toward Denver. A couple of hours into the drive, the phone rang. It was Rachel. Didn't think she'd call that fast, but then again, this was the pattern. I'd leave, she'd call. We'd talk. I'd come back. things would be okay for a bit. Then the same crap would creep back in. I figured I'd hear her out this time just to see where her head was. Hello? I answered through the car speaker. Scott, what's going on? She asked, her voice uneasy. Not much. Just heading to Denver, I said, flat as could be. Why? Picking up a car. So what I heard might actually be true then. Ah, so Tyler must have already started running his mouth. Maybe he called you, I said. Asked his girlfriend what her husband's been up to lately? I don't know, she said, trying to play dumb. What did you hear? You tell me, I shot back. Well, she hesitated. Tyler called and said you sold the business. And why the hell would he be calling you about that? I asked, letting the words hang in the air. He's your best friend, Scott. He was just curious if I knew. Best friend. Right. That joke had gone on long enough. All those years, I'd been the punchline. The clueless Czech guy who didn't know his own wife was getting cozy with his so-called buddy. Even my own family seemed ashamed of me for being a used car salesman. Yeah, I said coldly. I sold the business. Guess now you don't have to carry the shame of being married to a car guy. We should have talked about it first, she said, panic creeping into her voice. What about our future? Our finances. It's my company. I started it long before we got married. I sold it because I needed a change. That's it. Did you get a decent price? There it was, her true concern. Money. I got enough, I said. Paid off the house. What about the mortgage? Handled. All you gotta worry about now are utilities and taxes. And food? Gas? Insurance. She was nearly frantic. Guess I forgot about those. You might want to consider getting more hours at work. She paused, then asked the big one. When are you coming home? I didn't even hesitate. I'm not. She didn't speak right away. I could hear the shift in her tone as she scrambled for something to say. You remember what you told me when you left that night, she said, voice rising. That you'd keep the power on? Yeah, I did say that. And I'll figure it out. Don't worry. You can't do this, Scott. You have to come back. No, I said flatly. I don't. Scott, please. Don't do this to us, she said, and now the tears were creeping in. I already made my decision. What about your daughter? She tried, hoping guilt might work where begging didn't. You mean Emily? The same kid who's embarrassed by my name and ashamed I sell used cars. Scott, she's 12. She didn't mean it. Doesn't matter anymore. I let that hang, then said the words that sealed it. I'm not coming back. None of you have to be embarrassed of me ever again. Then I hung up, turned off the phone, let her sit with it. I knew she'd try calling again, probably over and over. Let her get mad, get scared, whatever. I needed the quiet. After a few miles, I started to breathe again. The road stretched out in front of me, and the farther I got, the more peace I felt. I figured her next move would be to call Tyler and ask what he knew. Typical. When I finally got to my destination, I turned the phone back on. 5 missed messages, 3 from Rachel, 1 from Tyler, 1 from Clara. I called Clara right away. Hey, sorry I had my phone off. Didn't want to deal with all the drama. I figured, she said. Your wife and Tyler called me, trying to find out where you were. What did you tell them? Told him the truth. You don't own the business anymore, and you're not coming back. That's all they need to know. Thanks, Clara. You're the best. If they keep bugging me, I'll tell I'm about to get the cops involved, she joked. Scott, she said after a moment, I know things feel dark right now, like you've got no one left. But you're wrong. We're your family. And we always will be. Thank you, Clara. Really? You always know what to say. Well, I've got a husband who tells me I'm amazing every day. I don't take that for granted. Don't. Ever. After we hung up, I thought about calling Rachel back. Maybe even Tyler. Nah. Let them sit in it for a while. I stepped out of the Mercedes and walked into the parking lot office, where the dealer was waiting for me. I've got that Mercedes I mentioned, I told him. Want to talk trade? He asked. Let's see what you've got. He popped the hood, walked around the car, and gave it a full look. It's clean. I could sell this in a week, he said. You sure about the deal? Kind of feels like I'm coming out ahead. Then you can return the favor sometime, I said. Not trying to make a buck here. Just want a car. 20 minutes later, I was back on the road with the top down, the wind in my hair. No destination. Just movement. North sounded good. So I turned toward home. For the next few weeks, I drove stateside. I stayed close enough in case Clara needed anything. I looked here and there. Once I was sure everything was okay, I headed south. Of course, the calls kept coming. First, angry. Then sorry. then bitter again. But me? I just kept driving. I heard the chatter, people talking, cards getting declined, rumors flying, and honestly, I just shrugged it off. When Rachel tried canceling my credit card, I laughed. Then Tyler had the nerve to call me, scolding me like some sort of villain for walking away from Rachel and Emily. I laughed harder. Then my lawyer texted me Rachel was now threatening legal action if I didn't come back. I called him up. Scott here. She's tossing around threats now, he said. If I'm still paying the bills on the house, she can't prove abandonment, I assured him. I've got something better, I added. I've got a recording, me telling her I'm leaving, and her snapping back that she doesn't want me to come back. He chuckled. That's gold. Send it to me. If she pushes, I'll deliver it straight to her attorney. Thanks. I'll check in next week, I said before hanging up. With that handled, I kept roaming through the state in my little red Camry. Wasn't the most comfortable ride for long trips, but it was fun, zippy, light, freeing. A couple of bored middle-aged women even gave me the OL flirtatious smile. One flashed me. I smiled, waved, and drove on. I wasn't looking for that. No matter how wrecked my marriage was, technically, I was still married. I cruised through many towns, villages, and landmarks. I wasn't in any hurry. Talked to people in parking lots. Some of them looked at me like I was living the dream. A guy in his 30s with the freedom to hit the open road? They didn't know the cost of that freedom. After about 4 months and 10,000 miles, I figured it was time to head back to Greed City. I stepped into Clara's office, used to be mine, and she looked up, saw me, and smiled big. She stood up, walked around the desk, and gave me a warm, tight hug. After catching up a bit, I asked, Hey, you think I could treat the crew to dinner at restaurant? You think we can shut down by 4? Absolutely. I'll make sure of it. Awesome. Let everyone know, we'll meet there in a couple hours. I left them buzzing, feeling like I just brought Christmas early. Before dinner, I made a stop at my lawyer's office. He told me Rachel had tried to claim abandonment, surprise, surprise. But thanks to my recordings and the paper trail of me paying taxes and utilities, he shut her efforts down cold. We talked about next steps, just in case she tried anything else. By 4, I was at place. The whole team showed up. We had a great dinner, laughs, stories, hugs. It reminded me of what a real support system looks like. As the night wound down, everyone filtered out until it was just me and Clara. She looked across the table at me and said, Scott, I know you feel powerless. Like you've been taken for a ride. But you're wrong. I looked at her, waiting. You just did what any good man does. You trusted the people you loved. I nodded. So, you figured it out then? Yeah, she said. Took me a while. But after you told me the name, Helpless Car, and said it told the whole story, it finally clicked. She continued, You may be Czech, but those jokes? They don't define you. They're insults. They cheapen who you are. Thanks, Clara, I said, the words sticking in my throat. You're the main reason I came back. I wanted to see how you handled it all. You haven't filled my shoes, I added. You made your own. She smiled. I had a hell of a mentor. We hugged again before she left with her husband, who, by the way, looked like the kind of guy who didn't know how lucky he was. I drove back to the apartment I hadn't seen in 4 months. It was stale and quiet, the air thick and musty. I cracked open the windows, let the breeze flow through. I kicked back on the little terrace that overlooked the pool. There were people swimming, kids playing, a family grilling on the other side of the patio fence. My mind drifted to the early days with Rachel. We had big dreams once. Wild plans. We were supposed to build something together. But those dreams had faded into something cold and bitter. I checked the time. 9:30. And just like that, I knew what I had to do. I got up, grabbed the keys, and slid into the Camry. Drove to my house. Yeah, it was still mine, bought it before we ever got married. Only my name was on the deed. As I pulled into the driveway, disappointment hit me hard. The place looked neglected. Yard overgrown. Porch light on, so someone was home. I knocked on the door. After a second or two, Emily opened it. Her eyes went wide when she saw me. Dad? Hey, Emily. Your mom home? She looked nervous. Mom, she shouted over her shoulder. From the kitchen came Rachel's voice, sharp and irritated. What is it now? Emily kept looking at me, then shouted again, louder, Dad's here. Rachel came around the corner, stopped dead when she saw me. Her voice shrieked. Where are you going? Traveling, I said evenly. And then, right on cue, Tyler strolled out from the bedroom. In his underwear. I raised my eyebrows. Well, look at that. Whole family's here, Mom, Dad, and the kid. What the hell are you talking about? Rachel snapped. I'm just saying, I replied. Seems like Tyler here finally took over my spot. Probably always meant to. It's fitting. Rachel looked confused. Emily, though, her whole face hardened with anger. You're wrong, she said. Oh. I said calmly, let me correct a few things. You like facts, don't you? I turned to her. For starters, Tyler was never my employee. He chose to work independently, so I couldn't have fired him. I glanced at Rachel. Utilities? Paid. Car insurance? Paid. What about groceries? Gas. Rachel cut in. You had a job. Did you lose it? You expect to just waltz in and take over again? Nope. I expect you and your roommate to start looking for a new place. Rachel squared up. I'm not leaving my home. Correction, I said slowly. This is my home. I owned it before you were even in the picture. My name's the only one on the deed. You're living here because I've let you. You left. She barked. So he's mine now. That's not how the law works, I said calmly. And since I've been paying taxes and utilities, the courts won't see it as abandonment. She started to say something else, but I cut in. Don't worry. I'm not kicking you out tonight. You've got until the end of next month. But when you go, take your daughter with you. That's when Rachel snapped. What do you mean, your daughter? She's our daughter. I smiled. Exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself. Rachel blinked, not getting it. I turned to Emily. Hey, Emily, you know how you don't like being called Check? Well, here's something for you. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Because I'm not your real dad. It's Tyler, I said. The room went dead quiet. You could have heard a pin drop. Rachel stood frozen, then whispered, What? Yeah, Rachel. Looks like your little slip-up on our wedding day made a baby. Just not with me. I turned to Emily, who was still standing by the door, stunned. But hey, good news for you, I added. You can finally take your real dad's last name. Maybe become Emily Tyler or whatever sounds good. Kinda makes me wonder, did your mom name you Emily as a little tribute to her lover? I said, half laughing, half serious. Rachel turned pale. Tyler looked like he'd seen a ghost. And you, Tyler? I said, locking eyes with him. You ready to step up? Take care of your daughter. They didn't respond. Come on, it's not that bad. Only 5 more years till college, I said, smiling just a little. Rachel and Tyler looked at each other, both shaking their heads. I don't believe in this, Tyler muttered. Great, I replied, pulling a folded paper from my pocket. Then you'll love this. I handed them the DNA report. See for yourselves. They snatched it up, read it, and just about collapsed under the weight of what it confirmed. I turned to Emily. Let the lovebirds know your mom's getting served with divorce papers next week and an eviction notice. Then I walked out. I'd said everything I needed to say. But in the quiet of that night, alone back in my apartment, the doubts came creeping in. Had it always been going on? Was I ever really her choice? Or just the fool standing closest to the altar? I felt like an idiot. Naive. Used. I'd been Tyler's personal punchline for years. Listening to his check jokes, turns out the biggest joke wasn't the check ones, it was me. I sank into the couch with a cold one and let the dark do the talking. The next morning, I met with my lawyer and got the ball rolling. Filing the divorce, listing the house. He said that because I wasn't really earning much, just the occasional car sale and some consulting, I probably wouldn't be on the hook for alimony or child support, especially with Tyler now in the picture. At least, that's what we hoped. Still, the betrayal cut deep. Rachel and Tyler had gutted every bit of trust I'd ever had. Rebuilding that, if I ever wanted to, was going to take a long time. Maybe even some therapy. While the legal stuff played out, I came back to the dealership. I made it clear, I wasn't the boss anymore. Just needed 1 sale a week to pay the bills. 1. That was enough. When the court finally came sniffing around my accounts, I made sure there was nothing to see. Just enough to cover rent, food, gas. Everything else? Already gone. No fat to trim. I heard Rachel hired a lawyer. No idea how she afforded one. Maybe he worked for free. Maybe someone fronted the bill. Either way, they dug into everything. Searched the sale, the bank activity, tried to find a loophole. They came up empty. Meanwhile, Tyler had been showing up at the dealership during the first weeks after I left, practically begging Clara for work. She shut him down every time. Eventually, he stopped showing up. Last I heard, the only place hiring him was Valvoline. $13 an hour doing oil changes. That ASE certification he always put off? Yeah, probably didn't seem like such a waste of time now. I figured he and Rachel would have to hustle hard just to scrape by. Maybe she'd have to work full-time again. Once things were in motion, I called up a realtor and let Rachel know the house was being listed. Since we'd have to split the profits 50/50ths, she needed to be out before it closed. A few nights later, there was a knock at my door. I opened it. "Rachel, what do you want?" I asked, tired. "Can we talk?" she said, eyes a little red. "I don't know if that's a good idea. We're in the middle of a legal fight. It's just us. No lawyers. Just a conversation." I thought for a second. "Fine, but we're going somewhere public." We ended up at Wendy's. Safe. Witnesses. Coffee. We sat across from each other, quiet for a moment before I asked, "Why, Rachel?" She didn't answer right away. "I guess I liked you both," she said softly, "and I couldn't choose." "So while you were with me, you were also with him at the same time?" She nodded slowly. "Yes. Tyler told me not to tell you. Said it'd destroy your friendship. So when you proposed, I made a choice." "You chose me?" "I did. I loved you. But I loved him too. I just didn't think he'd make a good husband." "So, on our wedding day, you were with him?" She started to cry. "Yes. Everything was just a mess. Why didn't you stop?" "I didn't want to lose him. And he didn't want to lose me." "Well, congrats. Now you've got each other. And your daughter." She smiled weakly. I didn't even realize what I'd done with the name Emily until later. I looked at her and said, "You know, Rachel, you say you still love me." "I do, Scott." "Well, I'm not sure you really understand what love is." "I loved you," she snapped, "more than anything. And yet, here we are. I don't feel love for you anymore. Just contempt." She didn't argue. She knew it was over. Before she left, I asked one last thing. "Did you ever stop seeing him?" She looked away. "No. We slowed down sometimes. But mostly, we kept meeting. Twice a month." "Thanks for being honest," I said. "About a year ago, something changed. You started treating me differently." "What was that about?" She hesitated, then got flushed. "Tyler started pushing for something more. Like a group thing, with you included. I knew you'd never go for it. So I resented you. Blamed you for not being open to it. I even thought, for a while, that I could have you both." "You ever go through with it?" "No," she said. "But I thought about it. And then you left, and it all just unraveled. Well, now you're free to do whatever you want. Doesn't concern me anymore." We paid the check and walked out into the night. Quiet. 3 months later, we stood before a judge. The divorce was final. Tyler came, too, awkward in a cheap suit. As we left the courthouse, Rachel tried to make light of things. "Maybe we should grab something to drink," she joked. "Sure," I said. A fitting toast to the end. But deep down, I knew it. That was it. The last time I'd see either of them. Let them have each other. Let them stay tangled in their little mess. They belong to it now. Rachel's gonna have to adjust to a whole new standard of living. Maybe she'll even appreciate it. Then again, maybe I still have a bit of resentment left. Check or not, I demand respect.